Hello humans, and welcome back to the Meditative Aiden video experience thingy McJigger, Meditative Aiden YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be talking about a blog post that I put up a couple weeks ago titled "What is Mindfulness?" It's super short, super concise, just goes over kind of what mindfulness is versus what it is not. So going back to really our definition of what mindfulness is. Mindfulness is an intentional awareness of the present moment that is characterized by acceptance, characterized by love and compassion, and a lack of judgment of our experience. The Buddha taught that there are a lot of different ways to achieve peace, and one of the primary ones is through mindfulness, which controls every other factor of enlightenment. And when the Buddha talks about enlightenment, he's talking about freedom from karmic bondage and all that stuff. But the thing is that enlightenment for us just means to alleviate and diminish the amount of suffering that we're experiencing in here, in our body, and in our environment. So the Buddha taught that mindfulness is one of the 7 factors of enlightenment. He even taught an entire discourse, an enormous series of lessons on what it means to be mindful and why mindfulness is so important. And to kind of give you some context, it's almost as if an entire book or 4 in the Bible were dedicated to mindfulness and what mindfulness means. Taking that from the Buddha, taking what he said about mindfulness, he said, when you come into an experience, don't allow yourself to become attached to it. That doesn't mean that you have to detach and just kind of stare at, the experience and experience it kind of like a stone wall. I mean, that's just not realistic. There would be no progress. Really, what the Buddha is saying is that when these experiences happen, we're able to let go of our clinging to them and participate in them more fully. So one of the most practical examples that I can think of that I mentioned in the blog post is craving. So we all have different cravings. We have a lot of different cravings. And these cravings vary. I mean, whether that means you're craving food, you're craving attention, you're craving a video game, you're craving some kind of escape, you're craving, some drug or whatever it is. The first impression that I got when I was learning about mindfulness was, okay, so mindfulness means to just kind of let go of that. Mindfully control your hunger and it won't bother you anymore. Or mindfully control your desire to eat food. And the thing is that with that attitude, if you go into mindfulness saying, mindfulness will help me control this craving, that's not really how it works. And the best way that I know how to describe that is it's kind of like if you stub your toe and you look at your toe. I mean, that hurts. And if you just sit there and stare at your toe and will that pain to go away, the pain's not going to go away. Rather, mindfulness is how you relate to that experience of pain. So with craving, it's not so much about trying to get away from it or trying to get it to stop or to control it. It's about learning to be in the present with it. It's learning to be able to experience it without the attachment necessary. So it's kind of like when you have a craving for food. Now, I'm not referring to a craving when you're hungry. That's a little different. I'm talking about craving for food when you're not hungry. Kind of like when it's late at night and you had a stressful day and you just want to eat food is a comfort thing. What the practice of mindfulness teaches us in this example that illustrates what mindfulness is, recognize that experience, to be with it, to be present with it, and to be non-judgmental of the experience. Now, so often I'll have these experiences with mindfulness where I sit down and I feel like I'm a bad person for wanting that food, or I'm a bad person for wanting that pain in my toe to go away. And the thing is that mindfulness isn't about trying to get rid of that pain again. It's about sitting in that experience. So the thing is that when you stub your toe, your brain doesn't really have an off switch to just say, stop feeling that, or stop that experience. When you're craving food, you can't just stop thinking about it. Similarly, if you're depressed, you can't just shut off that experience of depression, that experience of sadness. Otherwise, I feel like all of us would be able to sit down and just say, you know what, I don't feel like being depressed today. Bam, gone like that. Now, at some point, the power of mindfulness gives you the ability to handle your situation in a way where you might be able to do that. You might be able to sit down and feel that experience of depression and overcome it by choosing a different response. That's besides the point though. That's a little further down the road. The point is that you can't tell yourself to stop experiencing something, and you also can't ignore it. And mindfulness brings you into the moment with that experience, to be with it, to give it the attention it deserves, while remaining in the present moment. What some people might say to that is like, okay, well, if I'm standing in a fire, why don't I get out? Because it's kind of like if you are depressed and you have to sit in that depression and that experience, that doesn't feel good. Because that's really what it sounds like, is we're leaning back into this experience of depression. I think that when I hear that if I'm depressed, I need to sit in the present moment with those feelings, I don't really like hearing that, because that makes me feel like I have to sit and stew in it, like I have to just be surrounded by it, like delve even deeper into it. And that's not what mindfulness means either. Rather, mindfulness means that when you're experiencing that feeling, you take a moment to step towards it instead of running away, and instead of engaging too fully in it and going down that negative spiral. You're able to be present with it, to understand it. I think another really important question to consider here is, why are we so focused on mindfulness, and why does mindfulness matter so much? The thing is that underlying everything you experience, everything you go through, there is the experience and there is you. And the difference between the experience and yourself is that you are able to perceive the experience happening. I'll give you a personal example that sometimes I will be recording a video, or I will be writing something and I'll write a line that just sucks, or I'll record a piece of video that just sucks. And immediately what happens is I'll see that line that I've written and I'll say, that's a crappy line, therefore I'm a crappy writer. And what mindfulness brings into that situation, as you learn to cultivate that sense of mindfulness and grow it, you learn how to take your perception and give yourself some breathing room to experience things in a different way. So when I say that I write a bad line, what happens is I see the line that I've written. I can recognize my perception. I can recognize I am seeing that I've written a bad line in this book or a post or whatever it is I'm writing, or that I have created a bad video clip. Instead of immediately thinking I am therefore a bad writer or videographer, I give myself some time to open up that space and decide how I'm going to respond to that. So with an experience like craving in particular, something that happens to me is, I'll come home from a late night of work, I'll rummage through the fridge because I'm hungry, and I'll start eating because I see food and I want it. And that's a very primal drive that we have when we feel the need to eat food. It's kind of a need to feel safe and in control, I believe. So when you're experiencing a craving of any kind, you experience the craving first, and then you have a perception on it. And usually your perception gets overridden. You don't even know that you're perceiving that. All you know is, I am hungry. More appropriately, I want food. And the difference with mindfulness in that situation is that you learn to take that situation and say, I am perceiving a certain amount of desire for food. I perceive I want food. And why is this such a big deal? I mean, again, it seems like I might be beating a dead horse, but it's because so often we take these situations that occur to us in day-to-day life. You take these situations in your day-to-day life, and what you do is you experience something and don't give yourself the breathing room to interpret it. So kind of to bring this all together, what we've talked about is that initially, mindfulness kind of looks like something you can use to control situations that you're in, something that you can use to control how you're responding to your environment. But the thing is that mindfulness isn't about control at all. Rather, mindfulness is about learning how to adapt your responses to your environment. This doesn't mean that your response will be perfect, but it means that your response can make a big difference in the next few moments afterwards. We've talked about cravings and what it means to apply mindfulness to cravings and depression. So what does this mean for you? What does this mean for you coming into this video? It means that mindfulness has the opportunity to help you learn how to change your perspective, because we are kind of born with this inability to separate our experiences and our responses to the experiences. They usually, to so many of us, to you, they seem like they just kind of happen. You know, you don't understand why you're depressed. You don't understand why you're having this craving. And mindfulness gives you insight into the situation at hand. It gives you insight into what exactly is happening that's causing that experience. And it widens it and kind of untangles the two so that you have your experience on the one hand and you have your perception on the other, and it pulls them apart so that you can stop enmeshing your emotions with the experiences around you. And what this means for you is that you have the ability to change how you respond to your environment. So when someone says something that is really offensive at work, when you do something that you don't like, or something happens to you that's unpleasant, you have the opportunity to change, to untangle that and open up and unpack that experience, to learn more about yourself and to learn more about the situation at hand. So think about something that's happened today where maybe your perception, what you were thinking, what you were seeing was just too stuck with your experience. Your perceptions and your experience were too enmeshed together. I want you to think about how that experience could have been different. So as we've talked about with mindfulness, you experienced something and it was difficult, it was challenging, it was offensive, or it was just hard to deal with. And I want you to think about if you had been able to, as soon as that experience happened, if you were able to take a step back and give yourself some room to change the way that you were going to respond to the situation and interact with those emotions, those thoughts, and those sensations, to alter your perceptions, how could that situation have been different? And how could you have benefited from the situation, even though it was challenging? So mindfulness is about bringing your awareness into the present moment to experience those thoughts, those feelings, those sensations without judgment and without getting too entangled in them. Being able to separate how you're perceiving those things, how you're experiencing them from the actual experience itself. All right, friends, thank you so much for tuning in. Appreciate it. Appreciate your love and support. I hope all of you are doing well. Please feel free to subscribe if you like the video and like it maybe. Definitely subscribe for more videos, more updates. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook, and we have our blog, and I still think we have water bottles and puppies. Thanks guys, have a great day.